Take two.
Take two. Yeah.
Action.
Okay. I need you to actually tell me this time. Does it sound like complete trash, my audio, like last time that you let me record an entire podcast only to find out after the record?
I told you it sounded bad.
You said it was fixed.
Gaslight me. You had it coming over your AirPods somehow, which weren't even in your ears. I sounded fine on my side.
Had in one ear. Yeah, we recorded this podcast in full only to listen back to it. And either my AirPod was the culprit or it was my very expensive microphone setup. But it sounded like really bad.
It really didn't sound good. It sounds better now. And I mean it this time. I meant it last time, but it really sounds fine this time. It was a little touch and go last time. So I would tell you.
Well, what you're telling me is that your ability to discern audio quality is not to be trusted.
What you're telling me is that your ability to convey high quality audio is not to be trusted. We could do this all day.
We could.
Listen, you lost your passport on the airplane on the way to Juicy. I don't know how much any of us can trust much of anything from you right now.
I certainly would not place a lot of faith in me, but you know what? I also found it, so I think I deserve some credit there.
Technically, Porter Airlines found
they did. Yeah, no, I recommend fly Porter if you're flying from Canada to the United States.
that could have been a tough week if that had shaken out well.
That's our sponsor for the day, flyporter.com. Get your airline, get your flight.
Yeah, we do not get free flights for this, but
we do not.
We did get a free passport recovery for one of us.
We did. They gave, yeah. Just cost me my time and my stress, but it was good.
Yeah. How was Juicy?
Oh, it was good. It was great. Other than missing a big portion of the first day chasing down my passport, but yeah, it was great. It's always, it's all about the people, and Liz and Stormy flawlessly executed yet another event. You were sorely missed, I will say.
I had FOMO. I truly did.
I tried not to take pictures of all the things you should be missing out on, or you are missing out on, but yeah, I give you little glimpses.
You know what's actually funny is I had this morning, you know how you get like memories from Facebook or whatever, like for Instagram this time last year. And it was the same day last year flying back from Salt Lake City. And my flight was delayed for 9 hours on the way home.
Mine was like 12 hours delayed, I think.
Yeah. So I saw that and I was like, you know what, that just like those travel woes just contributed to my general. For anybody listening, the reason that I did not come to Juicy is just because from Vancouver to Boston, it was like 14 hours with a layover both ways. And I'm leaving for my wedding in Italy in like a couple of weeks. And I just didn't have two really long flights in me. So that just the 9-hour delay that I saw last time reinforced. I was like, you know what? It's good. Stay relaxed. Catch up, get ahead, and just be relaxed for the wedding.
Well, I hope you feel very rested leading into your wedding.
Do I look rested? Because I don't feel rested. Yeah, we'll get there. A little sunshine coming my way. Some pasta that usually fits the bill. Makes things work. But
you were missed, and
I missed everybody.
Yeah. So you'll have to attend whatever the next thing is.
Yeah, GWA I will be there. But on to the topic of today. I guess we're back. We're back again talking. Well, we're not back again. You and I are back again. Nobody else is back for this, but we're talking about how to create a marketing operating system, which is this is basically your proprietary approach to marketing for co-working spaces. And I know you break this down into the 6 Ps, which we can dive into, but I think to level set again, maybe the right place to start is, looking at why, whether you're a co-working space owner, operator, CEO, or, you're a co-working business supplier, whatever, why do you need a marketing operating system? What's kind of like the challenge if you don't have one in place?
Yeah. I mean, running a business is hard in general, and operating your co-working spaces is difficult. And there's lots of details, more that can be done than there is time to do. And marketing is exactly the same, and uniquely so in the sense that there's not really a standard way to run your marketing program or your marketing department. And so what ends up happening is either it's someone's part-time job, there may be an admin, a community manager, and so they're kind of roped in, or it's maybe you as the business owner, CEO, and you're managing agencies and so on and so forth. Or if you've got a few locations and you can justify it, maybe you've got someone working on a full-time in-house. And regardless of what's going on, it's still a tricky situation because you have all these moving parts and you have all these different people that are required to help you do all the various things. It's not really one person's job to do everything. Very difficult to do all the things, at least at a level you want. So how do you create throughput, which is kind of my word of the year, is how do I help my clients, and how do you as the operator go from idea to execution and get things over the line in a way that is efficient, is streamlined, is sustainable, and doesn't burn everyone out, is not overly costly. And so what I do is I have these P's, if you will. It just ended up that they all started with P's, and we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about those in this podcast, but it's basically a structure and an operating system to make it easier for you.
If there's one thing about Kev, it's that he loves alliteration and he loves a good analogy, and there will be no shortage of either two in this episode.
I didn't notice you didn't use, well, you did say a good alliteration, didn't you? So I'm not going to promise that anything's going to be good.
I said you love alliteration, so we even got a little sprinkling of that in there, a little foreshadowing. One thing that you and I talked about, which I think is interesting, just to kind of kickstart this, because one of the things that you mentioned is, maybe you have one person in house or you're managing agencies, but we talked a lot about the challenges of having one person trying to do it all within your P's, and we can dive into this later, but there's the people element. And maybe just to preface here, the 6 P's, I'll just run through them quick and then you can dive into each, but places, planning, people, projects, process, and performance. And so one of the things that we talked about was people. And as far as if you have one person in house who's trying to manage all these functions, it can be really tough. Or even if you're one person trying to manage multiple agencies, but having one person trying to oversee every element of marketing can be a really tough ask, can be a heavy lift for that person. And even if they're specialized in one area or another, that doesn't mean they're specialized in the others. So we talked about that before, which I just think is a pertinent point to make as we get into these 6 Ps.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of set the context and why this is important, is most marketers are T-shaped, meaning we tend to be pretty good at a lot of things. All the things can be done to a reasonable degree. Overseeing is one thing, but executing is another. And so usually people can execute one or two things really deeply at a high level and are reasonably good at managing the rest, and maybe decently good at doing some functional parts of those things. But there's just so much that can be done. So, with that in mind, how do we, knowing we don't have an unlimited budget and knowing that we can't just outsource the entire world and make everything work, how do we at least just be aware that, unlike maybe accounting where someone can do, I guess maybe there's bookkeepers and accountants and tax people, so there are different specialties. But it's just the type of department where it's not like a general ops person that can kind of do all the things. It's tricky. So we'll get into all of those things, and thank you for kind of summarizing what those P's are.
Yeah. So the first P in the operating system, and by the way, I really like the idea of an operating system. Just putting that out there for my own personal opinion. I really like that concept of an operating system. I think it really summarizes what you're doing. It's just like, I think of it like a computer. Like, it's kind of what it is. Your operating system has to be good in order for things to run properly.
I think of it more like an assembly line. So here we've already started with the alliteration on the 6 Ps. It's more like an assembly line where you need the component parts to manufacture and to get products through to the end to take to market.
Throughput,
baby. Yeah. And so like that. So, if something's not working, if one part of this is missing or lacking or not really clearly defined, or you don't have a way to organize these things, you're inherently it's going to be just the sand in the gears, and it's just things, or a stick in the spokes, if you will. And so what we're trying to do is say, like, how do we like McDonald's is very well known for systems, processes, and throughput, that you can go in and order 100 burgers. They'll probably have it ready for you in 20 minutes. It's amazing what they can do. I've never done that, by the way. It's more something you might have done in your youth, but
in my youth,
yesterday,
this week,
yeah, twice. So what we're trying to do is, like, how do we do like the Misc method, if you will, of your marketing program, and so yeah, we can just I guess like the way you have a problem here is that you're a business, and I've never really seen a business that had marketing super streamlined and figured out. People have it figured out to varying degrees, but it's super normal for things to feel a bit chaotic. It's very common for people to feel like there's spaghetti being thrown at the wall. So chances are you're not super clear on your data. There's a bunch going on, and it's hard to throw in more without breaking the system. People are getting burnt out. There's always more to be done than there's time to do it. And so these are kind of some of the general symptoms that you're going to encounter, especially as more moving parts, as you open more locations. It goes, what do you call the word?
Scalability.
Well, no, yeah, like the problems get they get out of control faster, right? They amplify and whatnot. So that's kind of what it is. So what we're trying to do is say, like, okay, we have the right people doing the right things. We're working on the right processes. We're working on the right projects in the right order, and everything's more or less organized. There's still going to be more than you can possibly handle. There's always more good ideas and time and resources, but at least you have the ingredients needed to get stuff through your marketing department, so it feels less chaotic. And that, by the way, is whether you are outsourcing it to, say, a done-for-you full-service agency, which I have lots of thoughts on, or you're doing it with an in-house marketer, or a combination of in-house and outsourced marketers. Either way, you want it to be smooth so that there's not so much friction every time you want to do something, which is challenging. It's really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess with that being said, then maybe we should dive into the 6 P's of marketing management. So again, to recap for anybody who wants to get ahead on this: places, planning, people, projects, process, and performance. And so when it comes to places, I'll let you dive into it, but I know you've got some assets that you're going to share for anybody who's listening as well. So what do you mean when you're talking about places in the P's?
Yeah. And so by the way, at the end of this, you can go over to coworking.marketing/resources. We have set up a Google Doc that you can opt into on our mailing list, and it'll give you a link to our past episodes KPI template. And we'll also share a template to a Google Doc that houses some of this stuff. In case you're not watching this on YouTube, by the way, if you aren't, you should definitely watch this on YouTube. We're way more entertaining when you can see how silly we look. But we also sometimes show, how things work. So yes, you're going to get a template for this if you go over to coworking.marketing/resources and download all of the stuff from all the episodes. But yeah, places is really just like, where do you keep your stuff? Because what happens is in the beginning, it's the owner that's kind of managing marketing. And later on, excuse me, you're starting to outsource stuff. And then eventually you're starting to bring that role in house. And so things kind of get lost and all over the place. So ideally you want at least one cloud storage place that houses all the files that you need, all the assets, your logos, your videos, your photography, your working documents, your processes, everything, right? And have that all be in one cloud storage. I use Google Drive because it has Google Docs integration, and it's just it just functionally works very well. There's all the different tools you need, but it could be Microsoft, it could be whatever platform you want to use. Some people use Notion, but you just need to keep everything organized in a cloud storage where if that person goes away or changes, or you want to delegate or move people around, stuff is stored, it's organized in one place, it can be found.
Yeah.
That's the first P, places.
On the places front too, it's like, this is something that seems maybe kind of trivial and not that important, but it's so important. Yeah, like for organization, but also just for streamlining things. Like you would be surprised if you don't have a really well-organized, centralized place to store everything, how much time is wasted just trying to track things down. It's insane. You could probably, in the course of a month with a disorganized system, you could tally up hours of your life that you could have spent doing other things that you spent looking for stuff because it wasn't properly organized. It's so foundational and it's so often not in place in a effective way. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, even things like passwords. So are you using the gold standard is a password management app. I use 1Password. Some people use Dashlane and others.
Use LastPass.
LastPass, yeah. So ideally, like you have those there. Some people use a spreadsheet, which is their marketing stuff, but that's kind of, security advisors would tell you that that's a recipe for disaster, so don't do that. But ideally, you have all that stuff, including passwords and assets, stored in the cloud, easy to access. And there was actually a really great tool that made this easier for you. So yes, you want to have, I use a Google Doc that links to all the 6 P's actually. And within each of those P's as a tab, it links to all these things that we're going to talk about. But I also used a tool called Dropbox Dash. They acquired a company called Command E. So you would press Command E on your Mac and it would open up all your cloud services, Google Drive, Dropbox, everything, Trello, like a lot of stuff. And you can actually just from a quick, Command E, it opens a pop search bar. You can type in marketing notes and find your notes document or logos and find your logo folder and jump right into things. What happened was that was open for people who were a past client of Command E before Dropbox acquired it. Dropbox bought it and then made it a private beta. And then they found out I was Canadian and they said, sorry, this is no longer available in your country. So I'm a little bit upset with that. Yeah, as a longtime Dropbox user. So I'm waiting for that to come back. But if you're American, the good news is you can head on over and you have a Dropbox account. I think it's like dropbox.com/dash or something. And it's a great one place, one source to quickly search everything so you don't go nuts trying to find stuff. But in absence of that, we have other systems for you. So that's places. It's where do you keep the stuff? And at your fingertips, one central source of truth, which is this mega document, this operating dashboard that I have. And then it's in one place. You don't go looking for stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then planning is the next P here, which is obviously massively important. I think I had some questions for you on this, but what are you talking about when you think about planning in this context?
Yeah, I kept the notes light on that. So you'd ask me all these questions, not know what I was going to say, keep you on your feet. And really it's keeping a roadmap of things you plan to accomplish, whether that is new location openings or every Halloween you want to do something, every Christmas you want to do something, whatever, right? Like if there are dates associated with it, those go in your planning tab. And yeah, just kind of keep track of stuff. Also, every good idea you have should ideally be stored and captured and written down, not necessarily executed, because again, there's always more ideas than time. And so what I do is I know like, okay, here's what we're going to work on a priority basis. I'll put the big stuff in there, and then we'll just keep track of that. We're not going to tackle yet. And then I'll just keep track of all the good ideas. And then as they become more important, we'll kind of move them to the top and then add them to queue. And so that's really just like, what are we going to do in the future? It's all your good ideas, all the time-based information. And then you don't have to remember key dates. They're all there. You don't have to remember all these good ideas you had. It's all in a Google Doc.
Yeah. And I think I'd asked you, and when it comes to planning, how often, I know you kind of we talk about quarterly planning and annual planning, but is there a regular cadence where you should be revisiting your planning, your strategy? I mean, obviously things change quickly in the world, in marketing and the industry. Is there a cadence where you should be revisiting what you're doing and your strategy and making sure that it still maps the way you want it to?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost is getting in the habit of writing down what you plan to do. And in the future, they're task oriented or project oriented. Typically, I'd say like if you have bandwidth and free time, then we go back to that's kind of like your ideas database. I mean, I have a whole other Trello board with 120 discrete things that I like to do with my clients. But having like at least a go-to reference to say, okay, what was next on our radar, or we're kind of now. We've got a few things going that we don't need to be actively working on this. We've got people working on it. How do we then introduce some new ideas? And then that's kind of your well to pull from, your prioritization. Or if there's key dates that are coming up soon, and you forget what they are, they're right there for you. So it's really, I think you kind of do a brain dump and you're constantly coming back to it and saying like, okay, here's what's on deck. Here's where we want to be. We don't have time for this now. We're kind of at our limits. Here's what we plan to do in the coming future. And you can make this whatever you want. Some people will actually want to do a 12-month plan, if you will. I handle that a bit differently with projects and process, which we'll talk about. But if for those of you that want to have clarity on what your whole year is going to look like, and maybe you want to run campaigns and so on and so forth, that's there for you. But the answer is, Taylor, whenever I think of it, I pop it open, we add stuff, good ideas, so on and so forth, so that there's a bit of a roadmap ahead of us at all times when we have capacity.
Well, so another thought that just came to mind here is like, how important is adaptability in planning? I mean, like people might want to have their year mapped out so they have visibility on what's to come at a high level, generally speaking. But how important is adaptability? Like, how much do you recommend that people leave some bandwidth or leave some, they're able to pivot and adapt on the fly as things change or priorities change?
Yeah, I mean, critically, you have to be able to adapt to the immediate needs that, it's a prioritization game more than anything. We'll talk about this next, but there's really two kinds of tasks you have to do. There's the kind that recur, and they recur daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or they reoccur, not on a fixed schedule, but you want to do this every so often, check on things, do things. They don't necessarily fit a repeating timeline. So that's kind of your processes, that things that just happen again and again. And then there's projects. And so, yeah, I mean, I think too long planning in the future is kind of a recipe for writing fiction. And so, because you don't know where you're going to be in terms of what projects you're working on, how much bandwidth you're going to have, and you don't know, what processes you're going to, how much time that's going to be taking you. So it's good to have a general idea of what you want to accomplish in, say, a 6 or 12 month period. But I think it ends up being a lot of fiction when you go in and try to write too much detail about the future. You're much better off saying, here are the top 5 things we're going to get working on, knowing that we're building on a framework of, bottom up, strategy, your website, your content, your ads, so on and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't get too hung up on long-term planning. That's my general style though.
Yeah. And so I think we had people slated for the next one, but it kind of feels like a natural segue to get into projects and processes, since that kind of aligns with planning. And I think the people thing is going to be a bit, we'll probably dive a little deeper into that. So do you want to jump into projects and processes now a little bit more?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, there's two kinds of things. There's the stuff that repeats and there's the stuff that doesn't repeat. So let's start with projects, or Canadians say projects. So we'll say projects, but they, and I forget, I interchange.
Tell me about it. Tell me all about it.
I was having conversations about toques, by the way, in relation to our previous episodes with some folks.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to
answers.
Yeah. There were some two conversations had. So yeah, in terms of projects, so it's really like, what are the things that we're working on, and they tend to take the bulk of your time, energy, and attention. And so you're writing down, okay, here are the 5 things we're doing. We're getting a new website going. We're redesigning our brochures, or updating our brand identity. Here's working on some SEO, and we're going to onboard this new agency. And so really, as we're going, I open up a tab that's like, here are the projects we're working on. And within that, we just make a sub bullet and say, here's the status of this thing. Here's who's working on what next. So at any given time, you, the owner, let's say you have an employee working on this for you, can kind of come in and say, okay, here are the open loops that I call them. Here are the projects that we're currently working on. Obviously, they're at various stages, and some of them are waiting for things, and some of them are waiting for you. And so that's the projects that we're working on. That's the whole scope of things. Tasks kind of just live with the individual person who has to implement those. So I don't really put just individual ad hoc little tasks in there. They tend to be more meaty. And then what's the status of it next step? So then when I have, say, calls with my clients, and we look at, okay, what are the open loops? What are the projects we're working on? And make sure that we're talking about them, moving them forward, getting them done, making decisions. And then beside that, which happens, every project, often there's an ongoing process related to it. So you may redesign a website and then you're like, okay, well, now that the website's live, what should we be doing? Maybe you look at your analytics once a month. Maybe you update your plugins once a month. Maybe you review your contact forms and make sure they're still all functioning properly, whatever. So what are we going to do as a process now that we've finished this project? So yeah, projects take most of your time, but ideally you want to be thinking about how do we stack up our processes as best we can so that the machinery is always working. So that, if you have an in-house person doing this and they leave, or if you have a part-time person doing it and you want to turn it into a full-time role, we know that these are things that have to tick along. We check Google reviews maybe as they happen. We log into these platforms once a week, once a month. And then we know we've designed a system. And then we have our projects that we're working on. And if something's not working, we can say, what part of the system broke down? What part of the recurring parts stopped working, stopped recurring, stopped being done? And do we need to either stop doing it, do it better, or do it differently than we have been doing it historically? And so that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And I think that what you touched on before with just saying, being able to kind of drop somebody, if somebody leaves, you're able to drop somebody new back into that same process and it just continues on with minimal interruption is kind of the idea, right? It's how do you set that up so that you're able to, no matter what happens, no matter who's involved, those processes keep running and functioning optimally. Yeah.
Also, like, let's say you have an in-house marketer and they're still doing stuff that anyone can do. At some point, you want to be saying, should we be getting an intern to help us, or a low-level, lower cost employee to be doing the functional day-to-day stuff that is frankly commodified work, right? That maybe AI agents will take over in the future or something, like, so freeing up your key people's time by delegating the task work either down to the community manager, the directors, or to someone internally, like an intern or another employee or whatever, right? So like the goal is to have your highest paid employees elevated to their highest skills, and anything that's can be task oriented, you delegate. And I know that you don't have to have a lot of money to do this, but the goal is to be working on the highest leverage thing possible, not just doing the little tasks, even though they really matter. Like publishing on Craigslist doesn't produce necessarily the best leads, but you get leads. And same with Facebook Marketplace, and logging into Liquid Space to confirm your occupancy. And there's just all these things that frankly have to be done. And ideally you have almost someone thinking about that all the time. Is how do I run the system? Or when you open a new location, what process do we have to open that new location, and what are all the steps involved, and who's going to manage and execute the playbook, right? And it's creating your own playbook around that. So
yeah, and I think that's another important element to mention here as well, is if you have this operating system in place and it's dialed in and
in one place,
running smoothly, then it is scalable. So if you are moving into a new location, if you're expanding, whatever it might be, then you can scale the operating system with it without having to reinvent the wheel, or without too much headache with it.
Yeah. And I think what we're looking for is predictable customer acquisition at the end of the day. And so the machine is responsible for everything. And obviously strategy is what determines how that machine looks and functions, and planning is totally up to you. But if something's broken, if you're not getting the results you want, some part of that system, whether it's the strategy or the process or the projects, is just not working. So it's not about the person responsible to do the thing. It's like, what part of this do we not have a process for things? Should we be doing more? Should we be doing less? Should we be doing different things? So you can analyze your open loop projects. You can analyze your recurring processes that happen daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and ask yourself, how can we do this better? And maybe it's even like, why do we keep forgetting to publish this thing on social media for these big, like International Women's Day, or like, pick something, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, let's put that into the process. Let's put that into an annual thing for that month, so we remember to do that thing on social media, and that gets delegated to whoever's responsible for social media, and that can go into a calendar system. Whoever's responsible for executing can execute however they want, whether they use calendars or project management tools. That's fine. The individual manages their lives on the task level, but it should be in the designed playbook. And so your process, anything that recurs that is non-obvious, there should be an associated SOP with it, a standard operating procedure. And by the way, this is true for your whole organization. So this is something often I'll work with people. We'll do this for marketing, and then it becomes, well, let's figure out what are all our processes for running daily operations, and watering the plants and opening the doors and locking the doors. And at least then we can point to something and say, we've decided that this is our system. And maybe we can't get to everything on it. And so we have to decide, are we going to cut stuff from our system, or are we going to get more resources allocated toward that, whether it's people, time, energy, money, or management, right? And so that's kind of it. Like, it's neutral.
Yeah. Well, and like with the idea of a system, because you mentioned McDonald's earlier, I can't remember what you recommended a book to me where they talk about McDonald's in that sense, and about that they're, McDonald's isn't just a restaurant, they're a system. When you're buying a McDonald's franchise, you're buying a brand, but you're also buying a system. And that's kind of what allowed McDonald's to become so massive, was having that fine-tuned, super dialed in system with SOPs for every single element. So to your point about doing this for marketing, but also for the rest of your business in the co-working world, it's kind of the same idea. What book was that again?
Yeah, I don't remember if they include marketing as McDonald's as an example, but there was a few books. One, we have The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It's just a classic.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, it just teaches you this concept of stop trying to be all the things and start to think in terms of who's responsible for what roles and how do we then create process around that. And everything is about process. Another one is Work the System. It's about a guy who owned a call center, I believe, and like every single thing in that business was documented. There was standard operating procedures for everything, and so it was all very checklist focused. And that was because he wanted to run his business that way. So I can't emphasize this enough. No one in your company is going to do this unless philosophically the business owner and or maybe your head of ops, but usually the business owner has to be like saying, look, this is going to slow you down at first, but this is going to build resilience in our organization. It's going to build repetition and consistency. And so no one's going to want to do this because it's more work, but doing it allows people to be promoted. If you got hit by the lottery or you wanted to sell your business, there you can point to something and say, hey, we get leads pretty consistently. In fact, we've written down all the things we do and we've written down all the things we're doing. And so someone could theoretically acquire you and take over all the little tasks with instructions, making you a more valuable and less risky acquisition target. So there's all kinds of reasons. People go on holidays. Yeah. Do you want someone to be on the beach trying to manage social media? Like, no, you want to have a process for things so someone else can run it and review it and do the thing. So yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking about burgers now since you mentioned 100 burgers. I don't know if that book ever actually existed or if I was just hungry.
I feel like there's definitely books. Yeah, no, the McDonald's thing is that there are definitely books on it, and it's a very well known, and it's apparently a great place to begin your job career, right? Like for young people. Did you?
Yeah. 14 years old. I was working at McDonald's first job.
So how long would it take to produce 100 burgers?
Not long, like 5 minutes probably. They're so dialed. Everything, like, we're gonna go on a little McDonald's tangent here, but it kind of applies with the SOPs and like, but everything, like the ketchup gun thing, like it's just one pump. It gives you the exact amount. So you're doing quantity control, right? Like it's managing
inventory.
Yeah. It's managing like how quickly things go. The burgers, they're like, it's like, I don't know, and then everything is like the pickle, like everything is systemized. So you could probably get through 100 burgers in like 3 or 4 minutes. It's so dialed in. And then from there, I moved away from the cooking, because I did this job called they called it Brower, and it was literally I just dressed in normal clothes, hung out with my friends, and we unloaded the trucks and organized the freezer, and it was the best job ever.
That sounds pretty good. It sounds like more your pace. Once they realized they don't want to put you in front of people, they're like, send them to the truck. We can't have this guy talking to customers.
Yeah, and then we decided to do a podcast. This might have been poor planning.
Yeah, no, I'm only joking. You are Mr. Charisma. The last book is Checklist Manifesto, and there's more. There's others.
There's Systemology too.
Systemology, that was the one that was on my tongue. Yeah, so they're great. So if you want to install systems in your business, it's really about buying into it yourself as a philosophy, and then working with your team. And this is what this playbook or this methodology is all about. It's like working with your team to implement it and just saying, look, I know it's going to take you longer in the beginning. It's not going to be fun writing down what we do, but it's up to you to have maybe a call. And this, by the way, could be a process. Once a month, you say, what are we doing? Are these systems up to date? Do we need to be doing more or less than this? Are they getting done? Are people checking them off the list if there is one? You don't have to check them off the list. You can trust people to do their job, but if you need to manage people, you can do it with checklists. And in reviewing your systems once a quarter would be a great process to put in. And then the SOP is basically look at everything and ask yourself, are we getting it done? Do we have to add or remove things? Is everything working? How do we measure things? Or do we need to change stuff? And that's your SOP for reviewing your systems and put it in the playbook.
It's like system inception, a system within a system within a system.
It is.
A process within a process.
Yeah, a process within a process.
A process within a process.
I'm going to make you're going to be thinking about it now, because I said, which one do I say again? Which one's the Canadian say?
Tomato, tomato, potato, potato.
Forget about it.
And so we kind of danced around this one a little bit in the last little bit, but the last of the 6 Ps, we've had places, planning, projects, process, performance. And the last one,
we're a bilingual podcast over here. So
yeah, we're multilingual. Sometimes we just make up words.
There you go.
Sometimes I start a sentence and I don't know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
You are the original LLM, the predictive language model. You're just like, as one word comes out, the logic kicks in and just follows until the sentence is complete.
Yeah, and it hopefully just ends up somewhere good.
Yeah, that's how ChatGPT works. It works for them.
Doesn't always end up somewhere good, I'll tell you that. But
that's true.
People. True. So speaking of people and analogies, you had a good one for this. And I really like this topic or this P because, talking about the hub and spoke mentality. And I like this because it gives a little bit of a high level of idea of not just people, but what elements you need in a successful marketing operating system. I know you had a really good analogy about crayons, so I won't take that one from you. But when it comes to people, how are people like crayons?
So we've talked about places, planning, process, projects, and really, like, at the end of the day, none of this stuff happens without people to do it. And we also talked about how most marketers are T-shaped, and if you're lucky, you're T-shaped. Some people are just kind of like surface level knowledge. Like if your core marketing person is an admin who also does the operations day to day, which is not a bad thing. It's a very common thing for smaller people to bring in these people and put them to best use. But if you're lucky that they're T-shaped, so they may know one or two things more deeply, and then everything else they'll have a working knowledge of it. And so really, I like to think of it as who's first of all at the hub, who's at the center of the hub, and that person is a project manager and they're a strategist. So their job is to figure out what are we going to work on, what's working, looking at it and analyzing the details and saying like what are we going to work on, and then how do we begin to execute it, to put them as open loops, as projects or as processes. And so in order to get things done, I always say like, you need the right people. If you want to do things at a high level, you need specialized people who do that thing, because it looks like it's all the same thing, but there's a reason that people build restrooms and kitchens and they're not the same company, or they do painting and that's not the same as the drywall, or even though you feel like they should be able to do maybe both, or various other things, right? Exterior, whatever. I'm not a.
There are a number of reasons why bathrooms and kitchens aren't in the same place too.
By the same people, but maybe they should be in the same place.
Well, you don't build them side by side either. But that's maybe not.
Maybe just no one's ever thought of it.
Maybe it's innovative.
Maybe that's the more efficient thing. We'll save that kind of. Yeah.
Put a pin in that one.
We'll think about I mean, you can have that idea if you're out there and you're thinking about it. Maybe in your co-working space, it'll be a kitchen restroom combo. You're
welcome. That one's free. The next one will cost you.
So at the center, yeah, exactly. So at the center of the hub, you have your strategist or coordinator, and that's usually it could be you as the business owner. You might be, if you're early enough and you got maybe a couple locations, you might be the one managing your ads person, your agent, your designers, and so you might be that person. You're deciding on things like how much do things cost. So what's your budgeting? What are we going to do? What's our planning, and how are we going to prioritize the work that needs to be done?
And why are we doing it?
Yeah, and why are we doing it? Yeah, how are we going to measure success? And who's going to manage the projects? Who's going to oversee the quality of these things? Who's going to review the performance of them? So that's really your kind of central strategist or coordinator. So in the beginning, it's you, the entrepreneur. You should never, all things are downstream in marketing. So it should always be you in part, at least at the strategic level. Never delegate or abdicate your responsibilities with marketing, because it's the most important thing by far in your business. All problems can be fixed if you have enough leads and clients and customers, right? So everything else they're good problems if that's the case. And you're in deep trouble if you don't. So that's the person at the center of the hub. So you've got a strategist. I'll go through these quickly and then we'll summarize them. I'll go into more detail. So you got a strategist, you've got a writer / communication / content person, aka Taylor Mason of tailmaker.ca. You've got a visual person, design / videographic, whatever, a developer or a technical person who can do things like integrations and web development. So they're your kind of go-to techie. Then typically you have an ads and or SEO person, and those are distinctly both different skills that are usually different people doing them. And then there's kind of a catch-all miscellaneous task-oriented kind of a generalist role, or just other things that can be done. But those are the kind of 5 core coloring, maybe 5 or 6 core coloring crayons in the coloring box, because without it, you can't put together beautiful paintings, right? You can't see it here. I've got a painting of some bit of a building, Sneaky D's in Toronto. Nice. And it's by a nice watercolor painter. But if they didn't have blue, red, orange, green, or missing certain colors, eventually you would it's like I guess it's like, we're going to get into more analogies here. People get it. And I'm just going to keep giving analogies.
An analogy within an analogy.
The knowledge is free, but the analogies are really what you come here for. So it's like baking a cake. And if you forget an ingredient, it usually doesn't work. It's kind of scientific, right? And so don't be surprised if your cake doesn't taste good if you're lacking sugar, or you're lacking flour, or some other key ingredient. Because one marketer can't do all things, or they can't do all things. Sometimes you find these people, by the way. You can do all things.
We've talked about this. So I had made the reference to myself within Tailmaker hiring full time, and I went all in, and I was like, that's it. This is it. It's time. I need somebody full time to help me out. And I was looking for kind of a unicorn person, and it's really, really hard to find because, I'm trying to find somebody who can project manage and also write and also handle administrative tasks or whatever and do it all. Yeah, not only from a bandwidth perspective, but also just from an expertise perspective. It's really hard. It's really, really hard to find a unicorn. If you can find them, keep them. But I've found in my own personal experience that it's hard to find a unicorn. The same applies for any other business, really.
Yeah, I mean, and it's especially true. Like if you do find this really talented, multi-skilled person, like they could also leave you to go start their own thing, or they could, or sometimes it's hard to keep top talent if you're, a private office provider and maybe you don't have quite a sexy brand. And so it's like, top talent wants to work in places that are exciting and kind of creative and what have you. So it's not as easy to get these like unicorns that can do all the things and then to keep them, unless you have a cool brand or you've got a great culture or you're getting lucky or you've got a young person who's capable of doing these things. So I think what it comes down to is the higher the stakes of the thing, the more you need the result to work and move the needle forward in your business, the more you want a specialist to do it. Like, I may be capable with conversion rate optimization as a former web designer developer. That's something I do. But if there's a lot on the line, I'll probably bring in a specialist. There's higher level ways of doing it, using different tools and analytics and so on and so forth to do that effectively. So it really depends on how much is at stake here, and therefore making a business case based on the value that they can generate about whether you're using a specialist or whether you're going to make do without it or make do with a generalist to do the thing. And by the way, I'll just go into a mini tangent here about full service done for you agencies. As you know, content alone, you're not full service, you're content. So content alone is super difficult to do. You've got audio, you've got video, you've got text, you've got social media. There's different mediums like social media, email newsletters. Email alone has a million different technical components, creative components, browsers and device factors and images and graphic design and sometimes code or HTML. And so like email, you've got your blog, you've got various other channels and stuff. So content alone it's like Narnia, like it's a whole thing. And so on the surface, it looks like you're doing a blog post and an email newsletter, but underneath it, those email subscribers need to be segmented by market. They need to be tagged appropriately so they're getting the right communications at the right time. And they don't have to be, but if you want to do it well, these are the things.
Yeah. Well, I think like to further illustrate your point, like if you think of it this way, like let's say you're, the marketing manager at a co-working space, and then you don't do it all yourself. Let's say you hire Tailmaker to do content for you, and then you've got me. But I'm not the only one doing it because there are so many specializations. And a lot of the times, like if I need something designed, like I'm not going to sit there and design it.
Designing stuff.
If it falls within the purview of content, but like if anybody's seen the first thumbnail I made for these YouTube videos, you'll know why I don't do design. But my point being that it's like marketing manager hires content agency hires writers, hires designers, hires whatever, working with, sometimes I'll work with a like a web developer or whatever to do some of the more technical elements. So when you look at it that way and you're thinking, imagine trying to have one person do all of those things and do all of those things well, when even when you hire outside consultancy, they don't do it all. They hire people too. So it's like a web of experts that come down and that are needed to really get things done effectively.
And now take that and multiply it by all the other colors in the crayon box, right? So we've talked about how complex potentially, you can do things very simply. You don't have to do everything to the nth degree, but content is, you open that door and there's all these specialties. Then you got, web development, and then you got a SEO, you've got ads, you've got graphic design, you've got, whatever, you got all the pieces, right? So now an agency who pretends they can do it, all of the things in marketing, which is a long time ago when I was young and freelancing and getting started, I was doing all the things, which meant that I had to manage even more people, more complexity, and every additional thing is exponentially more complex. And so, I think the basics, the fundamentals of all these things, someone can do. If you can get someone to do the fundamentals, honestly, that's 80% of the work you're going to do just fine. But the higher the stakes of that thing and the bigger you get and the more money you're spending, the more it needs to be done at a higher level and a higher standard. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting more money than you're saving by not getting specialists. And so, a generalist is great, but as the things become more important, you want to work with specialists. And those are the colors in the crayon box. And why is that important as well? Not just for projects, but for general throughput. Because in order to update that newsletter, we need to talk to people and gather information. So there's a project manager coordinator position there. We need to know what we're going to put in the content. So there's a strategy component. We got to write the content, We got to design the template. We have to design the graphics. We have to make sure that it works well on all devices, and then make sure the lists are segmented, like we mentioned, by market or location, and the right people are getting the right emails at the right time. So this is why at full service agency, I don't have a lot of confidence because I know how hard it is to own that complexity on behalf of all the different channels. So I recommend working with people who do 1 or 2 or 3 different things and do them well, and not companies who do everything.
Well, I will say too, like, I think that you and I work together a lot and have for quite a long time, but I've always said to you that I enjoy working on projects and on clients with you, because I find that having like a quarterback in place to call the plays for, to create alignment between all the various colors in the crayon box, right?
Yeah.
Stakeholders. But it's nice to have, like, it's things are so much more impactful and smooth and effective when there's somebody calling the plays, and then people, running the plays and then working together. I have like a football analogy in my mind when I look at that, but do you know what I mean? You've got individual players and everybody's running their routes for a common goal. But it is, like it's nice to have, when you have somebody calling the plays and having a bunch of people running the plays, I think it makes things way easier than just having, like, what's a quarterback going to do with nobody to throw a ball to? I'm going too far down that rabbit hole, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't know anything about football, but it all sounded like it made sense. And
foosball.
Yeah. And so I mean, you're avoiding silos by having that central person who's involved in all the things. You kind of need that bird's eye view from one person. Otherwise, you have fractured marketing where you have some people who do one thing and they don't talk to the people who do this other thing. And so you really need that unifying body. And that's, even if my clients have a marketing manager, I help just be that center point with contain the information, build that central source of truth, that dashboard we talked about, which you can get by going to coworking.marketing/resources. But so like you need that central hub and that person. And when you're managing projects, by the way, it's really hard to also do them. There's a Paul Graham essay, maker versus manager. And so by being both a maker, a doer, and a manager, they are really fundamentally like your task switching at a really high level. And so you can do both. I'm not saying you can't, but it gets much more complex later on. And at some point, once there's a lot of moving parts or you're getting bigger, you're spending more, you want to be separating some of the making and some of the managing. And also, like, if you're the one responsible for implementing, as a manager, you're going to want to do more things that are going to be harder. But if you're also the one to implement it, you might be incentivized not to do it. Right? Like, why am I going to make more work for myself? Right? So separating strategy from execution is actually a positive thing because it generates, the desire to fulfill more responsibilities to do more. And by the way, I think 20% of marketing matters and 80% doesn't. So it's always about figuring out how to do less. The incentives are less there to like make up new projects to work on and then to be the one to do them because, that's more work. The strategist in your organization is probably never going to be separated from the execution unless they are a consultant like me. Generally, they're just different skills that require task switching, and you want to be thinking about delegation as much as you can, as much as you can afford to specialists.
Yeah. I think Kane Wilmot at IQ offices, I was talking to him a couple of months ago, and he was just saying, it's kind of on the note of delegation, and just saying like the goal is to buy your time back so you can focus on your core competency. He was talking about it in terms of selling offices and, if you get an office that's managed so that you don't have to worry about it because the goal is to buy back time. But it's the same that applies in this sort of situation. The more you can delegate, the more you can buy back your time to focus on your core competencies. And, if you're not a marketing person and you're stuck way in the weeds of marketing and you're not paying attention to things that you should be paying attention to in other places of the business.
100%. Yeah. And so the goal is to create as much throughput as possible. So, because this is a game of inches, the co-working world is like inches matter,
Did you know you just made a football reference with that, by the way, from Any Given Sunday? Al Pacino's speech.
Oh, really?
Fighting. Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Great movie.
It's a great speech. Anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
Well, I did know that. I just didn't want to give him credit for it.
It's your speech.
Well, you kind of ruined my take, but it is a game of inches. So we do need to get a lot of these inches fulfilled and done, and that's throughput. But being the one to do all of it and manage all of it is really hard, if not impossible, to do at a high level. And so that's the challenge. It's all a balance, right? You have to make a business case for stuff. There's never enough time, energy, and resources to do all the things you want to do. So you have to be efficient. So those are the kind of the key coloring blocks to have. So when there's a design need that comes up, let's say a social media graphic or brochure or an email thing, you're going, okay, let's talk to our designers. Let's get that turned out. And you can work with someone maybe more expensive to do the initial brand identity and concept, and then someone less expensive or do it in-house in Canva or some similar tools. The long tail of execution can be done less expensively, but you need a designer on deck. You need a communications person on deck, even if they're in-house or outsourced. You need a a web developer, a techie person for all the technical things that go on with your website and integrations and analytics and stuff. And you need, if you're going to be spending any meaningful money on ads, and even if you're not, you want to at least get someone to set it up for you professionally, and then maybe manage it yourself, maybe. But ads are one of those things that you're going to get eaten alive in the market because it is a marketplace by the professionals. So it's very easy to waste and lose money on ads.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, from what I understand, a lot of counterintuitive elements, especially in the co-working industry when it comes to Google Ads, keywords that you think would make sense to pursue. And turns out they're the completely wrong ones. Ruben at Spacefully has taught me all about that. So yeah, it's one of those things where you might think you're doing the right thing and then you realize that you're actually burning your own cash.
100%. And there's just a million ways to make mistakes. You don't put negative keywords in, and I've seen people targeting across the border, like in a whole different country because their targeting was not set up properly. And I've seen it all. And even, so even agencies make these mistakes because it is a very technical craft. So it's not, these platforms are making it easier for people to do DIY it, but you will get your breakfast, lunch, and dinner eaten by the professionals out there if you're spending any meaningful kind of money. So that's another example of where you want to first think about outsourcing is your ads. And Ruben of Spacefully does it, and there's many. But yeah, so what we've covered so far is places, planning, projects, process, people, and those are the people, the colors in the crayon box. Last one is performance. And so if you think of, we're going to use another analogy here, Taylor.
Are we going back to soup? Should we recap the analogies that we've used in the 3 episodes? We've had soup for metrics. We've had crayons for people. We also had cake for people. We've somehow talked about football. I guess I went there with, the quarterback and all the running plays. So
we've talked about 4. McDonald's and assembly lines, machines.
Yeah, 5, 6. Wow.
Yeah.
So if you think 2 marketers, a million analogies in a co-working podcast.
There you go. Well, we'll spitball that a little further. So performance is the last one, and that's basically like, I was going to use a sausage analogy. Like, does the sausage come out of the other end? You're putting all this stuff in, the machine's churning it all up, piping it into where it's supposed to go, and does the sausage maker make the sausage? And that's black and white. So, and what that means is in marketing terms, so I can bring this analogy back home, is does it produce a financially viable situation? Are you getting enough leads? How much are you spending on money on marketing? What are you doing? Project process. How many leads are you getting? Broken by service. Go back to the last episode to figure out how we talk about this. What's your cost per lead, cost per tour, cost per conversion? And is it profitable? Is it about 1 month rent to acquire a new member or 1 month's fees? And then are you growing, and how's the revenues doing, and how's your, how much are you spending as a percent of marketing on whatever? And so are you being efficient with your marketing, and are the numbers improving or getting worse as you're working on these projects or processes? And that's like, you're either making the sausage or you're not. And if you're not, if it's coming out like it went in, then something's broken. We got to go and fix stuff. We got to fix what we're working on with the projects, improve or build or develop our processes. So it's really like, is the sausage machine producing sausages? There's your clip for the day. That's the question. And that's what performance is all about.
Sometimes the snippets just make themselves.
They do. You don't even have to flag that one. So yeah.
And we do have a whole episode too on performance and KPIs, which Kevin has dove way into the good stuff on that one too. So
episode 2.
Episode 2, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's it. Like at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. Another P, but is the proof in the pudding? And so that's where you're like, the numbers have to come out. And so the performance is not just your KPIs, which is how I kind of broadly look at things, but then you dive deeper and say, are our ads performing? Is our SEO work performing? Is our blog post getting engagement? Are we seeing leads improve? So you can add supplier reports or analytics reports from Google Analytics or wherever, or different platforms using into the mix. And that's your performance. And at the end of the day, either you're producing the result you want, and like we said, and the soup tastes good, or it doesn't, and that's
the sausage. And the sausage is coming out.
And the sausage
in the proper form.
Out. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sausage like.
It's coming out tubular.
There you go. Yeah, the tubular, but it's the flavor. It's not so much just the shape; it's the flavor.
Yeah, it's the flavor. I like it. This was good. I'm hungry. You hungry?
You can tell. No, I just ate dinner. I just ate lunch, so I'm actually pretty good. But
that got me a little hungry. We've talked burgers, we've talked sausages, soups, cakes, and now I'm.
Yeah. That's all you need. That's your whole lunch ahead of you, because you're 3 hours behind me. So you're still coming up on.
Exactly.
So that's the 6 Ps, right? And so places, which is where's all your stuff? Planning, what are we going to do and when is it coming and what's up next? Projects, what are the things we do that don't recur? And that's going to take up the bulk of your time. Process, and what are the things that do recur? And if so, how often do they recur or reoccur? Like opening a new location is a reoccurring thing that doesn't happen on a consistent, timely basis, but it's a thing that repeats. So you have to have a playbook and an SOP for that. And people, who's going to do the thing? And do you have individual specialists or one T-shaped generalist or some kind of hybrid of that? And then performance is what's the numbers that come out of the other end? Is it working or not? And so the way I organize this is in a Google Doc. And, actually, maybe I can pull it up.
Pull it up
real quick. It's in a Google Doc and it has tabs, right? So this is, by the way, where you want to be on YouTube if you're not already, because YouTube will be able to show you what I'm about to show you here. And I think I just closed the tab that I was trying to open. So bear with me.
I got to tell you, after this, for the rest of the day, this is what my brain is going to sound like. Throughput.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is you're already good at that because that's your literal job is you've got all kinds of clients, you're doing all kinds of projects. So your world is throughput, right? That's kind of any kind of assembly line. And so by the way, go to youtube.com/@coworking-marketing and you'll be able to see these videos in the future. I'm going to share my screen now, Taylor, and show you what we're looking at here. And for those listening, I'll try to describe it in a way that makes sense to you. Can you see this okay?
Yep, you're good.
So tabs are a new thing in Google Docs. And so so at the very top, I keep notes. So any conversation we're having, whether it's with suppliers or with the team, we keep notes. And so I write the date. You just do @ and then type in the beginning of the date, and I'll show you @today, and it'll pop open a today, and then you start typing your notes. And basically, it's like, what are we working on? Just to keep track of all the things that we have going on. Another tab. And so, by the way, I always change the format of this to be a pageless format, so there's no pages, and that just it actually unlocks collapsible headings. So I'm not going to get into the weeds of Google Docs here.
Tabs are fantastic. They're fantastic.
The tabs are great, and they're brand new, so you don't have to have multiple tabs, multiple documents. So they're brand new. Then we've got projects here, and these are all the different projects that we're working on. So we might have SEO. I'll just bump that up in size, ads, flyers, website, whatever. And here's what the tasks or next steps or who's responsible for what's happening, things that are held up. And then as things get done, I just basically copy it and I move it down to the bottom. And that kind of keeps a completed list, a history of all the projects and tasks we're working on, just to reflect back on and see how much we've been doing in the recent times.
And for anybody not watching, you've actually got checkable boxes set up with it too, which is awesome.
Yeah. So Google has this thing. It's a checklist. It's just like a bulleted list. You can create sub list items and whatnot, but a checklist there for you. And then things that are held up. So it's nice. It's very gratifying to be able to check a thing off a list and have the checkbox strike it through. And
there's a psychology. There's a psychology behind checking things off to-do list. It gives you little dopamine hits every time you do it, which helps fuel your day. I've read up on this a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I felt that. So yeah. And then so sometimes projects have like a bigger thing, like maybe you've redesigned a website, and so there's a bunch of revisions that need to happen. I might start a new tab or even a new document that goes, here's all the website revisions. So I'll go into a deeper document for projects that need more kind of work, and then that's just like an ongoing thing. And once that's done, you can archive it or whatever you want to do. So that's your projects, places. These are all the things. So some of these are my standard links that I bring on, like my discovery questionnaire, my processes template, my KPI template, personas and strategy work, photography brief, new location launch playbook. So you're gonna have all of your own, but you're gonna have your own like logos and graphics and so on and so forth. So that's all going to go in your places. And again, it's just a central source of truth. So if all you did is have one document, you'd be able to find everything at your fingertips. And again, Dropbox Dash, it's like a love-hate. Like that tool is so good. It's still in beta, but I think if you're in the US, you can redeem it. You can open it if you have a Dropbox account. Highly recommend it. It's so good. I can't wait till they roll it out everywhere. Yeah, tools, so on and so forth. So those are all in there. And then we got processes, which are really the things that happen daily, weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, quarterly. So a bunch of kind of stuff in there as well with SOPs. So if there's things that you want to write down how to do the thing, that's under the processes tab as a new tab. And then we got performance, which is where I linked my KPI sheet as well as any additional reports from things like ads, SEO, email, content, so on and so forth. And then people. So like who does what? This is the marketing manager, internal and external people, so that at any time you go, okay, we have a design need. I'm not the designer. This person does those design tasks. Ideally, you find someone who's capable, who's quick, who's not too expensive, and can execute all these tasks for you at a low fee, or you can do them yourself, right? And so that's totally up to you. But this is how I manage. So everything's in one place, less chaotic, one central source of truth. And that's kind of my little system in a nutshell.
And it's just like, it's so, I think you said this earlier, it takes time and thought and, dedication to build out a comprehensive dashboard like this. But just looking at it, when having this in place, it's going to keep you organized and save you a ton of time. Even just the places tab on there, everything is all in one place. There's no clicking around, no like searching through Google Drive looking for the right document or whatever it might be. It's all just there, and probably streamlines your life.
Yeah, I mean, this is a product of having done this over and over again with people. So like, I can't live in a world where I can't access things quickly. So it was kind of like my natural tendency is to like make sure everything's neat and tidy in one place. And I just find that it's much more efficient for the people I work with as well, just have everything organized. And when I eventually get hit by the lottery, someone's going to be able to run with this playbook with the, like, here's all my playbooks, here's the things that they can use. Here's our company's SOPs. And so I don't keep anything. I don't retain anything. Everything belongs to my clients. And eventually people go on, do different jobs, right? People move on, or you need to level someone up. So you need to write these things down so they can level up in their career and not get stuck doing things. But
the show must go on, and this helps you do it.
It does. Yeah. Business continuity is super critical. It's very common for a marketer to leave, or a key employee to leave. And with that, all their retained knowledge of how things work and what to do. And sometimes you have the benefit of them writing an offboarding document. Sometimes you don't. So it's much more effective to have everything organized from the beginning, which the only person who can install this in your business is the CEO or the owner, who may be an ops person who's bought into this. No employee is going to do this for you. It's like, except obviously the kind of folks who want to really run a very streamlined, robust thing. But given the nature that it slows you down a little bit, it's kind of, most people don't want to do it. And so it's really a mindset with not only marketing, but across your organization. How do we become a Misc method? How do we processize as much as we can without losing the magic? And I think that's going to happen anyway. You hire good people, tell them what you expect in terms of recurring stuff, and keep things organized, and your life, you can do a lot more. And that's the key. You can do a lot more with less.
A lot more throughput.
I hope your mic has I hope we'll be able to hear that in 3D when you're listening with two headphones.
That's kind of why I did it that way. I was hoping it would show through. Maybe if I get cooler mic placement for the next episode.
This is why you got to be watching YouTube. You can witness Taylor in action here, moving around his microphone.
Maybe this will be the way.
Throughputs. Yeah, you know what it's like? It's like Tim the Tool Man when the neighbors have the vents in front of their face.
Yeah.
You never see the neighbor's face. That's you with the microphone.
Yeah, it's like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights, where he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with my mic. And I'm starting to think that I never will. We're like 3 or 4 episodes into this thing, and I still haven't gotten it down. So
you're doing just fine. Just fine.
This might be it for me.
Yeah.
But I've historically been awful at closing these things out. I talk too much. I say too much stuff, and you've been really good at it. So do you want to close us out here?
I will. Yeah. So, just head over to coworking.marketing/resources. You can get all the resources that we talk about in all of our episodes. Some of them have them, some don't. You can get on our shared little email newsletter. Otherwise, you know where to find us. And if you don't, it'll be in one of the appropriate notes around the place. This has been great as always, Taylor. We'll talk again on Monday and get the next episode out. Do you know what the next topic is to prepare our listeners? I don't want to commit to it yet. I'd like to leave people in suspense, but I have a thought. Should I drop it? I think maybe I should drop it. It was to what should your CEO be involved in marketing, and should you be profiling your CEO in your marketing? Is one of the, getting your face out there kind of thing. Yeah, like do you make the CEO the face of your brand, and if so, when, how, where? That's where my mind was at. I got to build that out actually after this, but that's what I was thinking. I think it's a good one. We'll dive into that on Monday morning. Yeah, no, I think it's a great topic. Lots of nuances, and maybe even expand it to what about other employees? And how who do you incorporate? But big believer in the owner is the best marketer in your organization, and not leveraging that is a mistake. So missed opportunity. Yeah. So let's do that one. All right. Well, stay tuned for that next week. It's been great. Thank you, sir. Talk to you later.